They say when you truly know someone, you can smell their lies before they even open their mouth. I always thought that was just poetic nonsense, until the day I came home and the laundry smelled like his cologne. Not mine, not hers, but something citrusy and bold, the kind of scent you'd expect from a man who wears deep V-necks and still thinks doing crunches in the park is a personality. It was mixed in with the kids' towels. That's when I knew. Whoever he was, he didn't just pass through. He stayed long enough to take a shower in the same house where our son's growth chart was still marked in Sharpie on the bathroom wall. It happened the day before our supposed family weekend getaway, a trip she said she couldn't join because of an urgent work deadline. I wasn't suspicious at first. She'd been pulling late nights for weeks, and frankly, I welcomed the time alone with our two kids. I'd planned to take them hiking, roast some marshmallows, remind them that their dad still knew how to pitch a tent, and keep a fire going without YouTube. But as I packed, folding socks and checking for sleeping bags, I noticed something strange. Her car keys were on the hallway table, and the garage was empty. That made no sense. Her car was gone, but she hadn't taken the keys. The spare set was in my drawer, untouched. I stood there for a moment, staring at the keys like they were mocking me, sitting there all smug and innocent. Something had changed in the rhythm of the house. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but it was offbeat. There was a stillness in the air, not peace, but absence, like the house was holding its breath. So I walked through it like a detective in a suit I hadn't earned yet, scanning for anything out of sync. That's when I noticed the bathroom rug was wet. Not damp from the kids or a leaky pipe, but soaked, like someone had stepped out of the shower and then quickly tried to pat it dry with their feet. There were two damp footprints facing outward, larger than mine. I wear size 10s. These were at least an 11, maybe 12, judging by the arch and toe length. I bent down and ran my fingers over the carpet. Still warm. That's when the smell hit me, like lemon zest, cedarwood, and arrogance. It was on the towels, thick and clinging. I didn't get angry. I didn't scream. I just stood up, washed my hands, and walked out. That night, I told her we were leaving early the next morning. Going to beat traffic, I said. She nodded absently, barely looking up from her phone. Probably texting him. I didn't care. I wasn't taking her, and she didn't fight it. That made things easier. I packed extra clothes, made sure to double-check that my old Nikon was still in the garage, and then walked across the street to Kyle's house. Kyle's 16, always broke, and always looking for ways to make quick cash. I handed him the camera, pointed at our house, and said, if you see anyone go in or out, take pictures. That's it. $50 when I get back. He looked confused, maybe even a little scared, but didn't ask questions. Good kid. We left that Saturday morning. Just me, my boy, my girl, and the open road. They didn't notice anything was off. I smiled, played their favorite songs, even let them eat in the car, something I usually forbade. I let them laugh and feel normal. We were only supposed to be gone until Monday. I waited until Sunday night to text her, staying a bit longer. Cabin's beautiful. No reception, though. That was a lie. I had perfect reception, and so did she. I watched her location ping at the house every night. And every night, it was paired with a second signal. Same spot. Same time. The coward didn't even leave after she fell asleep. I gave it a full week. We fished, swam, built a fire. The kids didn't even ask about her after the third day. That silence said more than anything. When we finally came home, the house looked untouched, perfect, even. But the first thing my daughter noticed was the scent. She wrinkled her nose and said, "Why does it smell like cologne in here?" I shrugged. No idea. Maybe the cleaning lady used a new spray. But I saw the way her eyes narrowed. She's sharp like me. That night, I casually pulled out the camera and said I needed help uploading vacation photos. I showed them the pictures of our trip first, lakes, trails, marshmallows. Then I clicked open the second folder. I said nothing. I let the images speak. Grainy shots of their mother kissing a shirtless man at the front door. One of them holding a wine bottle on our porch. Another of them wrapped together in the living room, feet propped up on our coffee table. The one their mother always said was sacred because family memories live here. My son said nothing, just stood up and walked to his room. My daughter stared at the screen for a long minute, then asked, "When did this start?" I told her I didn't know for sure, but I did. And so would she, eventually. My wife came home the next day, smiling like nothing had happened. I watched as my daughter walked past her without a word. My wife turned to me, confused. "What's going on with her?" she asked. I didn't answer. I just turned back to the stove, stirred the eggs, and said, "Might be the cologne." We used to have this ritual every Thursday night. After the kids went to bed, we'd split a bottle of wine and binge whatever crime show we were into at the time. It was stupid, maybe even cliché, but I looked forward to it more than I'd ever admit out loud. It wasn't about the wine or the show, it was about her curling into my side, her legs tangled in mine, the way she'd whisper predictions about the killer halfway through an episode and flash that grin when she got it right. That stopped 6 months before I realized why. At first, she blamed work. Said Thursdays were becoming overwhelming, that she needed to wind down in her own way, usually with a podcast and a hot bath. I didn't question it. Everyone needs their space, I told myself. She'd earned that. But soon it wasn't just Thursdays. She stopped watching anything with me entirely. I'd press play on our old shows and find myself halfway through an episode before realizing I was watching alone in silence, the couch next to me a ghost of what it used to be. And when she did sit beside me, she brought her phone. Always. Fingers dancing across the screen, smiling at things she wouldn't share. Her laugh changed too, not the sound, but the direction. It wasn't for me anymore. She started jogging again, which on the surface seemed harmless, even healthy. I need to clear my head, she'd say. Running helps me reset. But the reset always happened at 6 a.m. on weekends, even in the rain, even when she'd gone to bed late. And her clothes changed tighter, newer, more flattering. She never mentioned buying them, they just appeared. I noticed her phone always stayed behind, locked in the drawer, while she ran with a smartwatch that I hadn't seen her wear in years. I made pancakes for the kids while she ran. When she returned, flushed and breathless, she always smelled faintly of something new. Not sweat, not soap. Something floral and faintly metallic. I once leaned in to kiss her neck, and she flinched, not a full recoil, just a twitch. But I felt it. She laughed it off. "You startled me," she said. I didn't press. But it lingered. She started using words that didn't belong to her, phrases like emotional bandwidth, personal alignment, energetic mismatches. She began following Instagram therapists and posting stories about choosing joy and protecting your peace. One morning I saw her write, "You don't owe anyone access to your energy," on the whiteboard in the kitchen, right above the grocery list and the kids' dentist appointments. She was still kind, still kissed me goodnight, still told me to drive safe. But her eyes no longer stayed on mine when she spoke. Conversations became transactions, logistical, sterile. Her laughter was louder around other people, especially on the phone. And her phone, God, her phone, became a second limb. It used to sit beside her, screen down. Now it was always in her hand, tilted just enough so I couldn't see. Notifications went silent. She said she was reducing digital noise. I believed her. She created a new email account for professional growth opportunities. I stumbled on it accidentally when Chrome autofilled a login one night. It had none of our usual billing or family correspondence, just a flurry of back and forths about coaching seminars, healing retreats, and something vague called alignment mentoring. She didn't mention any of it. She told me she was tired of the same old routines, wanted to find her purpose again. I supported her. I paid the bills while she scaled back her work hours to reconnect with herself. I gave her space. I took the kids on more solo outings so she could meditate, journal, detox from the noise. I became the silence. She stopped letting me do her laundry. Said she'd handle it herself from now on. I joked about shrinking her sports bras one too many times. She laughed, but it was clipped. One day, while looking for my jumper cables in her trunk, I found a second pair of running shoes, men's. Large, muddy, but relatively new. I stared at them for a long time. I didn't take a photo. I didn't confront her. I put them back exactly as they were and closed the trunk. That night at dinner, she told the kids about a new yoga class she'd discovered. "It's very healing," she said, smiling. I smiled back. My son asked if she'd be home for movie night Friday. She said she wasn't sure. A friend was taking her to a float therapy session. My daughter tilted her head. "What's that?" she asked. "It's like a spa, but for your soul," she answered. I remember thinking her soul had become a place I no longer had clearance to enter. And then her social media disappeared. I tried to tag her in a photo of our son's soccer game, but her profile was gone. Not deleted, just locked down. Private. I asked her why. She said it was for mental clarity. Too many digital distractions. I nodded, pretending that made sense. But it didn't. I knew her login, or I used to. It had changed. The intimacy of shared passwords, casual access, that too had quietly died. And still, I didn't accuse her. I didn't raise my voice. I held the image of the life we'd build in my hands like a snow globe, pretending if I didn't shake it, the cracks wouldn't show. I went to bed beside her, woke up beside her, kissed her cheek like a man in a role he wasn't ready to admit he'd been cut from. I didn't want to believe she was gone, but she was. And she smiled every day, just never at me. It happened on a Tuesday. Just another boring Tuesday, the kind that tastes like cold coffee and unpaid bills. The kids were doing homework, she was in the kitchen, and I was standing at the edge of the living room, finishing a report on my laptop, when I heard her laugh. Not the brittle, distracted one she usually tossed around like spare change, but a soft, warm laugh, the kind I hadn't heard in months. It drifted from the kitchen, low and private. I glanced up, saw her hunched over her phone, thumbs moving quickly, head tilted. I watched the way her smile curled, not the forced one she gave our neighbors or the mechanical one she gave me when I asked if everything was okay. No, this one had softness, warmth, possession. Like whoever she was texting made her feel seen in a way I no longer could. Still, I said nothing. I went back to my laptop and waited. 10 minutes later, I stood to grab a beer and saw she'd left her phone on the counter while she stepped away to check on laundry. And for the first time in months, it was unlocked. Not wide open, just hovering, screen lit up with a notification. A name I didn't recognize. E. No last name. Just the letter. The message preview read, "You looked perfect in that top. Still thinking about Sunday. Can't wait to," and the rest was cut off. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. I memorized every word, every space between the letters. Sunday. That was the day she said she was taking a solo hike. Needed nature, she'd said. Needed time. I remember packing snacks for her. I remember telling her to stay safe, like a goddamn idiot. She walked back into the kitchen humming, folding a dish towel like her world hadn't just detonated on my countertop. I watched her hands move, careful and delicate, the same hands that had touched someone else days ago. Her eyes flicked toward her phone. She saw the screen still lit, the message visible, and for the briefest second, less than a heartbeat, I saw it. The flicker. That panic she couldn't hide fast enough. She snatched it up and turned away, pretending to clean the faucet. Didn't say a word. Neither did I. That was the moment. Not the message. Not the lie. The flicker. The realization that she didn't feel guilt, only fear. Fear of being caught, not remorse for the betrayal. That's when something inside me just shut off. It wasn't pain. It wasn't even rage. It was clarity. Cold, mechanical clarity. I had been living in a stage set of my own marriage. Every touch, every laugh, every recycled, "I love you," was part of a script written months ago, maybe longer, and I'd been reading my lines like a fool while she was rewriting the entire third act. I didn't confront her. I didn't demand answers. I watched her walk down the hall, phone clutched tight, like it was the only thing she could trust. I sat back down, opened a blank spreadsheet. Not for work. This one was for war. Dates, timelines, inconsistencies. I started tracking everything I could remember. What she said, what she wore, when she left, when she came back. I didn't care who he was, not yet. He was irrelevant. She let him into our story, into our home, into the version of her that she once reserved for me alone. That was enough. She'd already invited death into the house, she just didn't know it yet. Not the kind that screams and slams doors. The slow kind. The silent kind. The kind that smiles during breakfast and kisses the kids goodnight while building an empire of ruin behind the scenes. That night, she curled into bed next to me like nothing had happened. Her skin smelled like lavender soap and cowardice. I stared at the ceiling, counted the seconds between each breath. When she reached over to touch my arm, I let her. My body stayed still, cold. She whispered, "You okay?" I said, "Yeah, just tired." That was the last lie I ever told her while still wearing my wedding ring. Because I wasn't tired. I was awake, more awake than I'd been in years. Every memory, every moment, every warm smile from the past snapped into focus like a broken puzzle finally laid flat. And underneath it all was rot. She didn't just fall out of love. She decayed. Quietly. Strategically. She planned a soft exit while I carried the weight of her excuses. And now? Now she had no idea she'd just triggered the final countdown. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't cry. I'd burn the whole damn theater down and make sure she had front row seats to watch herself fall. She thought she was clever. Thought the silence meant she was still in control, that I was too numb or too naive to piece together the mess behind her glassy eyes and mechanical kisses. But silence, in my hands, is not surrender, it's reconnaissance. I became her shadow without ever stepping into it. The next morning, while she scrolled through her feed with that self-satisfied grin she thought I couldn't read anymore, I told her I'd enrolled the kids in a weekend art class, something hands-on. Good for their imagination, I said. She smiled, nodded, barely looked up. That was move one, free up my Saturdays without suspicion. While she thought I was driving them to paint clay turtles, I was parked 2 blocks away from her yoga studio, binoculars in hand, coffee in the cup holder, patience coiled around me like a snake waiting to strike. And sure enough, it was never yoga. Not once. Each Saturday, she showed up in tight leggings and a loose tank, hair in that ponytail she used to wear just for me. But instead of walking through the studio doors, she waited. And each time, 10 minutes later, a silver Audi pulled up. Same driver. Same smug smile. I never saw them kiss. He was too careful for that, but I didn't need to. The body language was loud enough to hear through the glass. She lit up like she used to for me. Head tilted, laugh ready, hands always fidgeting toward him. I recorded every arrival time, every departure, down to the minute. I wasn't collecting evidence for a courtroom. I was collecting it for the truth, for my own unbreakable clarity. Then came move 2. I told her our internet provider called about a router issue and that I'd need to reset all our devices. She barely reacted. That gave me the opening to install discrete keylogging software on the family desktop and her tablet. Not to invade, just to confirm. Within a week, I had screenshots of her second email, the one she used for retreats, spiritual coaching, and of course, private bookings. That's where I found the receipts. Hotels booked in towns where no yoga retreat existed. Digital invoices for couples guided breathwork sessions, except I was never invited. Then came the calendar invites, buried in coded names like balance session and restorative healing. But one stood out, marked only with the letter E. I already knew him. I knew his face from the blurry photos Kyle had taken from across the street. I knew the car. I knew the scent. What I didn't know, what I needed to know, was just how far she'd let him in. So I did something unorthodox. I called in a favor from a former coworker who now worked in digital marketing. I asked him to set up a fake brand, wellness-related, something that would appeal to a woman knee-deep in midlife crisis spirituality. We created a polished Instagram profile for a fictional retreat center offering free trials to influencers and spiritually aligned women. We targeted only 20 profiles, hers included. Within 24 hours, she followed back. Within 48, she replied to the DM pitch asking for more information. She even sent photos of herself from her hikes, labeled them as part of her spiritual journey. My coworker sent me the screenshots. In one, she wrote, "I've been working hard to leave behind a version of myself that was tied to traditional marriage expectations. I'm building something new with someone who truly sees me." That was the moment the last thread snapped. She wasn't just cheating. She was rehearsing a whole new identity, erasing me from her personal narrative one poetic lie at a time. And still, I didn't confront her. I smiled, played along. On Sunday, I made her breakfast in bed, scrambled eggs, avocado toast, her favorite herbal tea. She looked surprised, maybe even guilty. "What's this for?" she asked. "Just because," I said. She took the plate with a hesitant smile. That same afternoon, I handed the kids a folder I called The Secret Mission. Inside were maps, riddles, and a fake spy dossier. I told them we'd be investigating Mom this week for fun, watching when she leaves, what she wears, writing it down like spies. They laughed, completely unaware, thinking it was just a game. But kids are sharper than we give them credit for. They asked questions. Why does Mom always leave with makeup and come back sweaty without it? Why does she get mad if I touch her phone now? Why did she say she was at the store when she came from the other way? I never answered. I just told them to keep writing things down. Meanwhile, I began charting every GPS ping from her smartwatch, the one she left behind during runs. I checked her mileage, her steps. They didn't match the times she claimed to be out. She wasn't running. She was being driven. And driven people always forget to cover their tracks when they think they're being chauffeured. Each move built on the last. I started asking carefully constructed questions, not confrontational, just curious. "Did you make it to yoga on time?" She'd say yes. I'd already seen her at the coffee shop across town with him. "Did the kids call while you were out?" I knew they did. I told them to. She'd say no. Each lie confirmed. Each dodge predictable. I knew her patterns better than she did by then. She wasn't a strategist. She was a child playing checkers while I built a chessboard beneath her feet. She didn't realize she'd been captured 10 moves ago, and I was still letting her think the game was hers. She walked into the restaurant smiling, late by 7 minutes, her hair tied up the way she used to wear it when she still cared about what I thought. Wearing that burnt orange dress I once told her made her look like autumn in motion. She spotted me in the back booth and waved, casual, like this was just another Wednesday night dinner, like she wasn't walking into the kill box I had designed with surgical precision. The place was nice, quiet, upscale, the kind of place she always said we couldn't afford, until I told her we had a reservation tonight and she didn't even ask why. She slid into the booth across from me and said, "This is a surprise," with that tight-lipped smile she used to wear during family holidays. I nodded, passed her the wine list, and let the silence stretch like piano wire. She ordered her usual Pinot Noir, no ice, and I ordered nothing. "Not drinking?" she asked. "I will later," I said. She blinked. Just a flicker. She was already scanning, her instincts twitching. I leaned forward and placed a small envelope on the table. She didn't touch it. She looked at me like she was trying to gauge how much I already knew, and I let her wonder. "What's that?" she asked. "Open it," I said. Still calm. No malice in my voice. Just gravity. She hesitated, then slid the flap open and pulled out a glossy photo, her, in his lap, outside the wine bar downtown, the date stamped neatly in the corner. His hand on her thigh, her mouth near his ear. Her face lit up like a teenager on prom night. She froze. Her pupils contracted. I saw the phases begin immediately. First, denial. "That's not what it looks like," she said, voice shaking. "We were just laughing." I asked, "Planning yoga poses?" She tried to smile, but it died on her lips. "He's just a friend," she said. "We've been talking. That's all. You know I've been lonely." There it was, justification. She reached for the wine as if she could drink the weight away. "We weren't intimate." "Not really. It wasn't serious." I raised an eyebrow. "You go to hotels with all your friends?" Her mouth opened, then closed. She switched tactics. "You haven't been present. You don't talk to me anymore. You just drift through the house like a ghost." I nodded slowly. "And you made a new life with someone else instead of using words." Interesting solution. Her jaw clenched. "Don't pretend like you've been perfect." She leaned forward, emboldened by the wine she hadn't even tasted yet. "You stopped seeing me. You treated me like a roommate. I needed something more." She was trying to drag me into the mud, trying to get me to bite, to rage, to bleed, but I didn't give her the satisfaction. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a second envelope. Larger. Thicker. She looked at it like it might explode. Inside was everything. Printouts of her email exchanges, receipts from their spiritual retreats, screenshots of text messages sent from a backup app she thought I didn't know about, hotel bookings, selfies. In one of them, she was wearing the necklace our daughter gave her for her birthday, while straddling him in bed. She didn't even open the folder. Her hands trembled. Her breath grew shallow. Then came the last phase before the fall, mocking confidence. "You went through my stuff? Are you seriously that obsessed? That controlling?" Her laugh was bitter and dry. "You know, this kind of behavior is why I had to get away. You're suffocating." I looked at her like a surgeon looks at a tumor, clinical, detached, precise. "No," I said, "this behavior is what people do when they've been lied to so thoroughly they forget what oxygen even feels like." Her mask cracked then. Not from guilt, but from fear. Real, raw fear. She realized I hadn't just caught her. I dissected her. I knew the when, the how, the frequency, the lies she told to the kids, the gifts she gave him that she claimed were for business contacts, the night she told me she was meditating but was really sitting in his car a block away from our home. "What do you want?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "This isn't how we fix anything." I smiled for the first time all night. Not wide. Just enough to make her lean back. "Fix," I said. "This isn't about fixing. This is about truth. You buried it. I dug it back up. And now it's yours to carry." Her face collapsed in on itself, shame battling rage, guilt twisting into desperation. The server arrived just then, holding the wine, sensing something wrong, but not daring to ask. I nodded at him, calm as still water. Poor hers. I won't be staying long, but I didn't leave yet. I wanted her to sit with it, to stew in the reality that the man across from her had seen it all, knew it all, and still hadn't raised his voice. I wanted her to feel the silence like a knife against her throat. And she did. She stared at me with eyes that no longer held power. Only dread. She didn't cry at first, she waited, calculating, hoping the storm would pass if she just stayed still enough. But when I didn't move, didn't speak, didn't blink, she snapped like brittle glass under a boot heel. You smothered me, she spat, voice already rising, fingers clenching the edge of the table like it might ground her. You never saw me. You just went through the motions like some dead-eyed robot. What was I supposed to do? Live like that forever? I didn't answer. Her eyes darted, searching for something to land on, my reaction, my pain, anything human to grab onto. She found none. So she leaned forward, teeth bared in a bitter sneer. You think you're so calm? You're pathetic. This big show, this trap, it's disgusting. You were always weak, always hiding. No wonder I had to look elsewhere. Still, nothing from me. I let her burn. She kicked her chair back and stood, her voice louder now, drawing glances from nearby tables. You were boring. You know that? Predictable. A provider, a roommate, a background character in your own life. My eyes met hers then, still calm, still silent. Just enough to make her flinch. I gave you everything, she continued, shrill now, desperate to wound. And you gave me. What? Routine? Grocery lists? I finally spoke, low and steady. And yet you stayed. She froze, mouth open. I tilted my head slightly. If I was all that bad, why didn't you leave? She hesitated, color draining from her cheeks. Because of the kids, she said. Because I was trying to protect them. I nodded slowly. But you didn't protect them. You just lied louder. Her lip trembled then, not with sorrow, but rage. You're doing this to punish me. I leaned back, hands folded. No. I'm doing this to stop lying to myself. Her breath hitched. You're cold, she whispered. You're not the man I married. I let that one hang for a second, then replied, no. He died when you did. Her expression shattered. She stepped closer, lowering her voice like that might draw me back into the orbit of her chaos. We could have worked through this. You could have tried harder. I gave a small laugh, sharp and humorless. You didn't want me to try. You wanted me to fail. So you could feel justified. She blinked rapidly, trying to summon tears now, trying to rewrite the script mid-scene. I never meant to hurt you, she said, voice breaking. It just happened. I nodded. Like slipping on a knife, right? She reached out then, fingers trembling, trying to bridge a chasm that no longer existed. We can fix this, she said. We're still a family. I stood up slowly, looked her straight in the eye. No, I said. We were a family. You dismantled that. Carefully. Repeatedly. On purpose. Her face twisted. The panic beneath the fury was showing now. What are you going to do? She asked. Take the kids away? Ruin my life? I didn't smile, but something in my silence made her step back anyway. I'm not going to ruin anything, I said. I'm going to give you exactly what you built. Nothing. Her hands balled into fists. You don't get to decide that, she hissed. You don't get to just walk away like you're better than me. I shrugged. I already did. Her mouth opened to scream something else, another insult, another plea, but nothing came. Just air and dread. Because that's what terrified her most. Not the evidence, not the exposure, but the cold, surgical indifference. I wasn't angry. I wasn't mourning. I was done. And in that moment, she realized something that no manipulation, no outburst, no fake apology could unmake. She had become irrelevant. And there is no deeper punishment than watching someone you once had power over look at you like a stranger they no longer fear. She thought it was over the moment I walked out of that restaurant, but she could cry her way through a redemption arc while I sat in some motel room nursing whiskey and regrets. But that was never the plan. That wasn't the ending. That was the spark. The real story started after I closed the door behind me and drove in silence, heart rate steady, mind razor sharp, knowing the next phase would be clean, calculated, and final. I didn't need revenge born of chaos. I wanted execution, surgical, methodical, complete. The next morning, I sat down with a cup of coffee and a notepad and began outlining a blueprint. Step 1 was information. I cataloged everything: dates, photos, messages, hotel receipts, screen recordings. I printed them, backed them up twice, and stored copies in 3 different locations, one at work, one in a locked drawer at my parents' house, and one in a secure cloud folder labeled Tax Records 2019 that I knew she'd never open. Then came the financial firewall. I opened a new bank account in my name only, transferred half of our liquid savings, froze the joint credit cards, citing suspected fraudulent activity completely within my rights. I rerouted my paycheck and created new passwords for every shared account, including streaming services, the smart thermostat, and the kids' school login portals. Petty? Maybe. But every lock I changed reminded me that I was reclaiming inches of a life she thought she still had access to. I pulled the title for the car she drove, mine, bought in my name, registered under my credit. I scheduled a tow. Didn't warn her. Just had it picked up during one of her healing circles. The look on her face when she came out to an empty driveway would have been poetry. Then came the HR bomb. Quiet, professional, and nuclear. I emailed her company's compliance officer, not to air dirty laundry, but to notify them of her inappropriate relationship with a client she had claimed was part of her emotional coaching portfolio. I attached screenshots, timestamped photos, and flagged a potential violation of her company's ethical guidelines. I didn't accuse. I asked questions in just the right tone. Is this consistent with your policies regarding personal relationships with clients? No emotion. Just paperwork with a pulse. Then I moved on to the personal front. I sent a short, carefully written message to her parents, people who had always claimed to value honesty and family. I told them I thought they deserved to know the truth. I attached 3 images and wrote one line. I've kept this quiet for the kids, but I can't shield them from her anymore. I didn't write more. I didn't need to. Her father responded in less than 20 minutes. Come by this weekend. Bring the kids. I also sent a message to 3 of her closest friends, not all of them, just the ones who still had moral compasses. I said I understood if they chose to support her, but they had the right to make that choice knowing the full truth. I attached the photos, told them I wouldn't engage further. I didn't hear back from them immediately, but I saw the effects ripple across her face over the next few days. Tight-lipped silence, frantic texting, sudden phone calls taken in the garage. The facade was crumbling. Next was the legal end. I met with a lawyer, paid in full upfront from my new account, and filed for divorce. No drama. No accusations. Just a quiet petition with full custody requested, citing emotional instability, breach of marital trust, and evidence of ongoing deception. I had already documented her absences, the kids' confusion, her misdirection, the messages. I knew the court wouldn't take kindly to it. I also filed for exclusive use of the marital home. I provided proof that I paid the majority of the mortgage, managed the household finances, and was the stable parental presence. The judge granted a temporary order. She had 30 days to vacate. I told no one. Let her find out from the letter taped to the fridge when she came home one night expecting leftovers and peace. I even preemptively contacted the school counselor, provided context, not the ugly details, just enough to ensure the kids would have support when everything went public. I was moving like a shadow, always one step ahead, stripping her life down to its foundation while she tried to put out fires with the same lies she'd been feeding me for months. And the final touch? I didn't change my demeanor. I smiled at her in front of the kids. I offered her tea in the evenings. I let her think, for a brief window, that maybe I was softening, that maybe the storm had passed. But I was only waiting for the final piece to click into place, the moment she tried to weaponize sympathy. When she asked, just once, can we talk about what this means for us? I responded with a single word, closure. And then I handed her a folder, thick, clinical, complete. Inside was the divorce paperwork, the custody proposal, the schedule for her moving out, the timeline of her betrayal, the financial audit, the contact history of everyone I had spoken to, and the access she no longer had. She flipped through it with shaking hands, her mouth moving but no sound coming out. And I just stood there, calm, patient, unmoved. She thought she had time. She thought there was a window. But the house was already gone. All that remained were ashes in the shape of her own deception. She wore white. Not a soft ivory or something tasteful, blinding white. Tight, flattering, like she was trying to purify herself by force of fabric, like she thought this was still her show. It was her sister's engagement party, a small backyard affair with fairy lights and string quartets and just enough champagne to blur the tension. Everyone was there, her parents, her best friends, her coworkers, our neighbors. And me, of course. She didn't know I'd been invited. Her sister had made that decision quietly, the way people do when the tide starts turning, and they realize the wrong one's been drowning all along. I arrived just before the toast. She saw me from across the yard and froze for half a breath, then smiled like nothing was wrong, like I was still the man who'd forget and forgive. I didn't smile back. I just raised my glass slightly and held her eyes. That's when she started to crack. Not visibly. Not to them. But I saw the way her fingers tightened around the stem of her flute. The way she adjusted her dress like it suddenly didn't fit. She kept glancing toward the tent entrance, expecting someone else. Him, maybe. He never came. She didn't know yet that I'd spoken to him, just once, directly, the day after she signed the temporary custody agreement. I'd shown him everything. Not with anger. Just clarity. He backed out fast. Said he didn't want drama. Didn't know she was married. He'd ghosted her since. She didn't even know she'd been left yet. That revelation would come soon, and I made sure I'd be there when it did. Her mother was the first to speak. She pulled her aside after the toast, not loudly, but directly. I saw the emails, she said, holding her daughter's hand with a grip that looked more like restraint. He showed us everything. Her father wouldn't even look at her. Just stood near the punch table, red-faced and silent, sipping water like it was the only thing keeping him from spitting out disownment. Her best friend Laura approached next, face tight with disappointment. You used me, she said. I defended you while you were sleeping with some stranger and lying to your kids. The noise was still polite, soft jazz and clinking glasses, but the storm had begun. She tried to laugh it off at first, brushing hair behind her ear, saying, this is all being blown out of proportion. You guys don't understand. But her voice cracked halfway through the sentence. She looked for me again. I hadn't moved. Just stood near the trellis, arms folded, watching. Present. Unshakable. That's when the tears started, not the kind you use to manipulate, but the kind that leak out when the walls finally collapse. Her makeup didn't run, she made sure of that. But her posture did. She stopped standing tall. Her shoulders hunched. Her eyes darted around like a cornered animal. One by one, people peeled away from her. Conversation stopped when she passed. Friends turned their backs mid-sentence. She tried to call out to someone, anyone, but no one answered. Even her sister didn't offer her a seat at the table during the speeches. She sat alone at the edge of the party, staring into a glass she hadn't touched. And I was still there, watching. She saw me watching. And that's what broke her. Not the emails. Not the affair. Not the silence of her own family. But me. Standing there, completely calm, unaffected, a mirror reflecting every choice she made with no distortion. Her world was imploding in real time, and the one person she expected to scream, to argue, to fight, just stood and let it all happen. That was the justice. Not fury. Not vengeance. Just presence. Just her seeing me there and knowing I had nothing left to say, because she had already said it all with her actions. She stood slowly, looked at me across the grass, lips trembling like she wanted to say something profound. But there was nothing left in her that carried weight. She opened her mouth and closed it. No words. Just a choked breath and a shaky step backward. And I didn't follow. I didn't need to. Because this was her moment. Her reckoning. Her fall. And I made sure she had an audience. She cornered me in the middle of the room, all eyes already on her, face blotchy from crying but voice louder than I'd ever heard it, like volume alone could rebuild the reputation crumbling at her feet. You don't get to do this, she snapped, shaking as she pointed at me, then at her father, her sister, at Laura. You don't get to turn everyone against me like I'm some villain in your perfect little story. The room froze. Her mother gasped, someone whispered, oh my God, and her sister stood frozen by the drinks table, wine glass tilted, lips parted. I turned to face her, not moving, not blinking. I didn't turn anyone, I said calmly. You just finally ran out of places to hide the truth. She stormed closer, unhinged now, mascara streaked like war paint. You think you're so righteous? So noble? You think just because you caught me, you get to play executioner? She laughed, a brittle, empty sound that didn't match her wild eyes. I was drowning. You left me alone in that house every day, more focused on bills and kids and schedules than me. I stepped forward, now close enough that she had to look up to meet my eyes. I didn't leave you, I said, voice low and sharp, slicing through her tantrum. You left yourself. I was right there every single day. You just stopped showing up. A hush fell over the crowd. Someone was recording now. I could see the phone just past Laura's shoulder, the red circle pulsing silently like a ticking bomb. You don't understand, she screamed, voice cracking. I needed more than chores and routines and dead conversations. Her father stepped in, tried to put a hand on her shoulder, but she slapped it away and turned back to me, rabid now. You're a coward. You didn't fight for me. You just stood there and watched me fall. I shook my head slowly, letting the fury build without ever letting it break loose. No, I said. I stood there and watched you choose to fall. Over and over. Lie after lie. Hotel after hotel. I didn't walk away from you. I just stopped dragging you back from the edge when you clearly wanted to jump. She screamed in frustration, hands clenched, nails digging into her palms, eyes darting around the room, looking for someone, anyone to step in and save her. But no one did. Her friends wouldn't meet her gaze. Her sister looked like she might cry. Her mother just turned away in shame. Then, out of nowhere, she shouted, "He made me feel alive." Her voice echoed off the walls, and the name didn't need to be said. Everyone knew who he was. The affair partner, the one who had already vanished into the night like a ghost with a guilty conscience. "He made me feel seen," she howled. "Not like some tired housewife you tolerated between work emails." That was it. The dam broke. I stepped forward one last time. No yelling, no theatrics, just truth sharpened into a weapon. He saw the version of you invented. The highlight reel. The mask. The fantasy. And the second that fantasy cracked, he ran like hell. Just like I knew he would. Because he didn't want you. He wanted the lie. The air went out of the room. Her mouth opened, then closed. Her eyes filled, but no tears fell. The silence was louder than the screaming had been. And then came the final blow. I turned, looked around the room, and spoke not just to her, but to everyone watching. "You know what hurts the most?" I said, voice calm, clear. "It's not that she cheated. It's not the lies. It's that she didn't even have the decency to end it before she started rewriting our life behind my back. She didn't fight for love. She abandoned it and blamed me for the fire she set." She collapsed onto a nearby chair, stunned, shaking, broken. Her mother knelt beside her, but she didn't reach out. No one did. I straightened my jacket, looked one final time into the eyes of the woman who destroyed herself, and said, "I gave you my loyalty. You gave it to a stranger. And now you've got exactly what you built, nothing." Then I turned and walked out, past the guests, past the shame, past the wreckage she caused. And she watched me go, because that's all she had left. Watching me walk away while everyone else finally saw her for who she really was. She lasted about 6 weeks before the silence finally crushed her. Her job let her go under the guise of department restructuring, but everyone knew the real reason. Clients started pulling out after screenshots of her, and the affair partner circulated quietly through LinkedIn groups and community forums. Courtesy of someone who knew exactly where to drop the match. Her inbox dried up. No more coaching requests. No more offers to speak at weekend retreats. Her name had become radioactive. Friends stopped replying. The group chat she once ruled now moved on without her. She tried posting cryptic quotes on social media about healing, about rebirth through pain, but nobody liked them, nobody commented, and eventually she locked her account entirely. Word spread fast in town. Not through gossip, but through glances, people crossing the street when they saw her, baristas suddenly out of oat milk when she ordered, mothers pulling their kids a little closer at school drop-off. She left the house less and less. Moved out of the city 3 months after the divorce finalized. A one-bedroom apartment in a forgettable town where no one knew her face or the stories attached to it. She got a part-time job at a wellness shop 2 counties over, stocking essential oils, folding meditation towels, pretending to still be someone with answers. Her affair partner never reached out. Not once. The moment the illusion crumbled and her name came with consequences, he disappeared like vapor. She tried texting him 3 times, then 5, then once more on what would have been their 6-month anniversary. All left on read. All unanswered. I know this because she told me. In a voicemail. It came on a rainy Thursday, the kind where the world feels gray at the edges. I recognized the number, but I didn't pick up. I let it go to voicemail, let her voice tremble on a digital recording she had no idea I'd never listened to twice. She started with silence. Then a breath. Then, "I still love you." Her voice cracked on the word love. She said she made a mistake. That she missed the kids. That she missed me. That every morning she woke up hoping it was all a dream. That every night she cried until sleep finally silenced her regrets. That I was the only person who ever really knew her. That she would spend the rest of her life trying to be someone worthy of forgiveness, even if she never got it. She said she hoped I was happy. That she hoped I'd at least think of her sometimes. I didn't delete it. I just never replied. A week later, she showed up. At my house. Unannounced. Hair tied back. Hoodie stained with rain. Eyes swollen like she hadn't slept in days. She didn't even knock at first. Just stood there in the driveway like a ghost from a past I'd already buried. When I opened the door, she started crying before she could speak. "I don't have anywhere else to go," she said. "I don't want anything from you. I just needed to see your face again. To know you were real." I looked at her for a long time. Not with hate. Not even with sadness. Just distance. Like I was trying to remember where I'd seen her before. Like she was a photo I'd glanced at once and forgotten. "You were the love of my life," she whispered. "Please, Say something. I stepped out, closed the door behind me, and looked her dead in the eyes. Strange, I said, voice steady, quiet, final. I don't even remember your name anymore. She broke right there in the rain, sank to the ground, covering her face with her hands like the sky itself was watching. I didn't reach for her. I didn't help her up. I turned around, walked back into my home, and shut the door behind me for the last time. And that was it. No encore. No redemption arc. Just silence and a lesson carved into the ashes of a life she burned with her own hands. Thank you for listening to my story. I've been sitting with this for a long time, and sharing it here means more than you know. Where are you from? Did you feel it too, the justice? Let me know if you enjoyed it, because I sure as hell did.